Today's movie review is The Fox and the Hound. The Fox and the Hound is based on the book by Daniel P. Mannix. This movie was released in July 10th, 1981, because it's the only Disney movie with just animated by the Nine Old Men as well. And the plot in the story goes is that of how as where Big Mama has raised an orphaned young fox after the orphaned fox's mother was killed by the hunter named Amos Slade as well. And the owl introduces herself as Big Mama, including her friends, such as the ones you see in The Fox and the Hound, such as Dinky the Finch, Boomer the Woodpecker, as well as one of her friends. And then it wasn't long until Todd was adopted by the kindly farmer named Widow Tweed, who was voiced by Jeanette Nolan, who voiced Lucy Cash from the Incredible Hulk episode A Rock in a Hard Place from the third season of the Incredible Hulk TV series. Until moments later, she names the orphan fox as Todd, while her neighbor hunter named Amos Slade, who was voiced by Jack Albertson, who was Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, brings home a young puppy hound dog Copper and introduces Copper to his hunting dog Chief. When Todd and Copper first met in their childhood, they became best friends with their internal friendship. Amos gets all frustrated at Copper for wandering off to play with Todd, and places Copper on a leash. While playing with Copper, when Todd came by after Copper was on a leash, outside the barrel, Todd has wakened Chief, which starts to provoke the trouble. Amos Slade and Chief had to chase Todd because he thought that Todd was scared. Is after the chickens that Amos Slade has in his chicken farm in The Fox and the Hound, until they were busted by Widow Tweed, and then she takes Amos Slade's gun and shoots Amos Slade's radiator on his old car, and then he said that gun's loaded, and she shoots it, and then she says now it ain't loaded, and he thought that Fox was after his chickens, but she said that he wouldn't do a thing, and then Amos Slade got mad that he saw it happen until the argument has happening on, which is almost not in a good way, especially of how this was going on, especially for the temper of Amos Slade has going to get a lot of trouble, what Widow Tweed said. But that wasn't long until Amos wanted to kill the fox if he trespasses on his farm for the second time. Hunting season comes by, and Amos Slade takes his dogs, Chief and Copper, into the wilderness for the interim on the winter coming. When Big Mama, Dinky, and Boomer had to explain to Todd that Todd is going to grow up and to become his enemy, when Todd is going to come back as a hunting dog when he's fully grown. And that's how that he knew that Todd and Copper will remain friends forever until he's fully grown as well. The spring comes. Todd and Copper has grown to their adulthood after they were first met from childhood from the very beginning. Copper returns as a hunting dog, always wanted to track down foxes. The night comes, Todd went over to visit Copper. Their conversation awakens Chief, but Copper explains to Todd that those days were over because he's a hunting dog, because even though he's great to see Copper, but he shouldn't be around Chief because it's going to start to provoke trouble between Chief and Amos Slade. And then Chief alerts Amos, and then the chase ensued. Bot comes when Copper catches Todd. When Todd was making a run from Chief, which is right where the railroad tracks were, and then Copper told Todd he doesn't want to see Todd get killed until they loose them as well. And then Todd wanted to make a run from him, but Chief found him, and then Todd was running from Chief, who was on the railroad tracks, but until the train comes, and then the train just causes Chief a broken leg, and then he falls into the river below, and then Todd looks, and then Copper got angry that Todd might have killed Chief, but clearly it's a broken leg. Copper wants a vengeance against Todd for what he has done to Chief has come by, because he knows the vengeance in him as a hunting dog, what Copper wanted. Until that wasn't long until Widow Tweed found Todd, and then Amos Slade went over to Widow Tweed's house. He wants to search for Todd, but clearly Widow Tweed told Amos Slade she cannot come barging on the property. When Amos Slade was enraged as well, vowing vengeance, Todd is no longer safe with Widow Tweed, and that's how it was until she leaves him at the game reserve on a disastrous night in the woods for his own problems in the woods. Morning comes, and Big Mama introduces Todd to Vixie, who is a female fox who wants to have Todd adapt his life in the forest, and that's how Todd first came in love with Vixie, played by Sandy Duncan, and that's how this is the first time that Todd has found Vixie, which is their love at first sight. The next day comes. Amos Slade and Copper were trespassing on the game reserve just to hunt for Todd, ever since Widow Tweed has left Todd at the game reserve, which is in the woods as well. Which it's what, and then because they were trespassing in the woods, setting up fox traps, until Todd notices the fox traps. Amos Slade shoots and says he's getting away, and then Todd wanted to have a conflict fight between him and Copper, until Amos Slade notices there were two foxes. Until he basically wants to shoot at them, but Copper and Amos Slade were surrounded by a bear, and then Amos Slade tries to shoot the bear with a gun, but the bear pushes Amos Slade down, and then causing Amos Slade to fall in his own traps, such as the fox trap. And then Copper tries to battle the bear in a dangerous fight, but the bear attacks Copper, because he was almost nearly killed, until Todd saves Copper's life from getting attacked by the bear, until they were fallen in the waterfall in the river below, which causes to kill the bear. Copper came to see Todd if he was all right, until Amos Slade tells Copper to get out of the way to shoot Todd, but Copper protects Todd from having Amos Slade shooting him, but then Amos Slade gives up, and he doesn't want to shoot the fox anymore because he has given up on it, and then that's how he realized he has lowered his gun. Todd and Copper have their last smile before parting home. Widow Tweed nurses Amos Slade back to health, while Copper and Chief rest. When Copper was going to sleep, he remembers the day when he met Todd in their childhood days. On the hill, Vix comes and Vixie joins Todd when they look down to see Todd's former home and Copper's place. And that's how you end this movie, with the end logo. So that's the plot on the story of The Fox and the Hound of this movie goes. The animation is great because it's Disney, classic traditional Disney animation done by animators as well. And it was produced by Ron Miller, Art Stevens, and Wolfgang Reitherman as well. That's how... This was the last involvement remaining members of the Nine Old Men, including Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, when they were working on it, as the old animators worked through there, when they had newer animators working on for The Fox and the Hound, how they did this. And this movie was distributed by Buena Vista Distribution as well, from how it is intended. Even though this was the first film to feature, including if they wanted to hire Brad Bird, John Lasseter, and Tim Burton for the production, but it was been delayed over 6 months on the departure of Don Bluth and his team of animators, when they had a lot to do when they ever made this movie as well. Because this movie was how it's considered to become a Disney classic, from what I understand. The animation is great. It's classic traditional Disney animation. No CGI in those days, back in the day as well. From how The Fox and the Hound wanted intended, of how you would expect. The sound was pretty great, especially the gunshots, because they were recycled sounds that were used for Old Yeller, which is a 1957 Disney movie, as well as the bear growl sound effects that were voiced by either Clarence Nash or Candy Candido as well, which they were originally used for The Jungle Book as well, especially how. But we'll come to how you be expert on how this movie wanted to know about how The Fox and the Hound had a lot to do of how you would expect for hearing some recycled ones in a Disney animation. And also, this movie is pretty good. There's some sad scenes in it. It makes you want to cry and all. But there's also some moments in The Fox and the Hound. The animation design on Todd kind of is like the reminiscent to Robin Hood, which is another Disney film from 1973 as well, because I like how the animation, how it's intended as well. Because The Fox and the Hound I consider this to be a Disney classic. The music was great in it, and also, not only that, overall, I consider this movie to be enjoyable if you want to watch this movie again and again as well. I'm going to give this movie score a 10 out of 10 as well, because I consider The Fox and the Hound to be a well-known Disney classic of how, unlike any other classic Disney movies out there, The Fox and the Hound was the 24th Disney film as well It's just part of the Disney animated feature films, because I considered it as well. And yes, I consider The Fox and the Hound to be my favorite Disney film, because it's a classic as well. If you haven't seen The Fox and the Hound, give this one a watch, because it's a classic. You might check this movie out. You can watch it on Disney Plus, or you can get it on DVD or Blu-ray as well. Because if you haven't seen it, check it out, because it's a classic movie from Disney. Because I love this film. Because I must say that this was based on the book by Daniel P. Mannix as well, as that's how the movie, how it tells as well as how, because this movie was released in theaters on July 10th, 1981, which I understand. So that's going to be it for my movie review for today. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's what I'm going to say for this. This movie can be perfect for a re-review if you want to rewatch this movie as well.